If you've been told your characters are boring or you don't know how to build a character from the ground up, I have you covered today. We're going to go over everything you need to know to create a fantastic protagonist that's not only going to pop off the page, but it's going to want to make people act in your film and get producers interested, hooked, and continue reading. So let's dive right in and craft some compelling characters that make your screenplay stand out and enhance your story. Writing compelling characters can seem so scary, but it genuinely does not have to be. I want to talk about some really out of the box ways of crafting compelling characters. Before we get into that, we have to start with the foundation of who your character is and why they are in this particular story at this particular stage. It's extremely crucial to start with that information. You might be tackling a story from a few different angles, but most people come with a high concept or a log line or a bit of information that they want to see play out on page. So let's start with your logline. You want to find characters that complement your logline and would be very interesting to see in that space. We're going to start with a very basic concept and grow from there. So let's say that you're really interested in seeing how an aspiring filmmaker goes to a networking event to meet the director of their dreams to get their film produced. Okay. This is what we want to explore. We want to see somebody go into that space and try to make their dreams happen. Before anything else, we need to understand who that aspiring filmmaker is. Who is that protagonist, and why is this a particularly interesting story for that character to be in? You could hit this at a hundred different angles. Maybe they resemble the director and they think that they are related to them somehow, and they want to prove that their deadbeat dad is actually their favorite director. Maybe they quit film school knowing full well that it was a waste of their money and they didn't really want to pursue that path anymore and wanted to make it out on their own. So they're a strong willed, independent filmmaker. Maybe their grandma is dying and they want to create this love story for their grandma to exist before she passes away. And the only way that they know how to do that is to find this filmmaker. You see how I'm coming out with stakes, reasoning, and why getting this film is so important. So that's where we need to start first is who is this character? What is their goal? And why are they the perfect candidate to meet that goal? Or why are they the worst candidate to meet that goal? Both of these can be very interesting and allow for escalations. So, you know what? I kind of felt a little bit about the wanting to create a love story for his grandma via film. So, let's go with that one. All right. So, now we have somebody who has a deep want, a deep desire. And that desire is to show his grandma how much he loves her by creating this short film that depicts that, right? And he wants it to be the best possible film. So he needs to get his favorite director on board. So we already have a strong want. Now, what we want to do is create something that is flawed within this character because perfect characters are extremely boring. We don't go to film to see perfect people play their perfect little lives out. If we did, we'd all be very bored. Even in reality TV, we see the dirty, the messy, the extreme, the drama, because that's what draws us in and makes it interesting. Flaws don't have to be huge, but they do have to be meaningful. And they are often rooted in a deeper trauma with a deeper goal in mind, unrelated to the goal that we're going to see play out on screen. Our filmmaker, let's call him George. Great. I just come up with his name. Names are not that important for me, just FYI. The only thing that's important about a name is that it's interesting, doesn't start with the same letter as everybody else in your script, and is kind of the vibe of the person that you're going for, right? So names have an importance, but please do not spend all day finding names. Likely when you go into production, they're gonna change the name anyway. So out the window. We have George. George is our aspiring filmmaker. And he can have a few different flaws. I would run through different ideas in my head before kind of landing on one that feels most genuine. Flaws are so interesting because when you hear that, you think somebody needs to lie, cheat, steal, narcissism. Yes, all of that. But actually, flaws are so much deeper than that because they come from a place of trauma that your characters have experienced. And it's kind of like an unhealed wound that they either need to acknowledge and recognize or they need to fix before they can actually meet their goal. George could be really bad at filmmaking. Like maybe he's just really bad at it. He wants to be completely in control of everything and unwilling to collaborate. That's from an idea of narcissism, right? But he's not just narcissist because he's a narcissist. There has to be something deeper and bigger driving that narcissism. Maybe when he was younger, he put his trust into the wrong people. They really backstabbed him, let him down, and now he feels like he can't relinquish any control because if he does, he's going to fail and his project's going to fail. You see how that's layered and deeper. Another potential thing is maybe he has spent so much time focused on his passion and his endeavors that he forgot about his family. And now that his grandma is dying, he's really regretful of the fact that he spent so much time doing these other things and not spending time with his grandma. So again, his flaw is not necessarily that he's like overly passionate about his passion and overly spending time there, but the fact is his flaw comes from regret. He regrets the choices he makes and now he needs to do something to try to rectify it before it's too late. So we first have his want, which is to make that love story film for his grandma. It's even deeper than that, right? It is to show that he cares about his grandma and to show how much he loves her. And then we are going to do his flaw. And I'm going to go with the flaw that he spent too much time on his passions and deeply regrets some of the choices he made. The reason I'm picking that one over the other one that I suggested, which is where he's more of a narcissist and unable to collaborate, is because his ultimate goal is to work with a director that he admires. And those two things kind of they don't work well together and it would be harder to tell in a story that well I don't like to collaborate except for in this one instance, right? That's a different story. It's not what I'm trying to go for, so let's stick with he has regret. Now we have a principal character, your protagonist, who's going to be active and make choices. How do we know what choices George wants to make? When faced with the choice of sandwich at a sandwich shop, is George gonna go tuna? Is he a meatball marinara? Is he a vegan? Does he not even like sandwiches and regrets being there in the first place? How do we know? And we should know. These are things that we should know about our characters eventually. It doesn't all come at once, but here are some pro tips to help you get to know your characters better than you ever thought possible. Stepping away from writing the screenplay and moving to prose is a fantastic way to really dive in and get to know who your characters are. In the past, I've kind of written autobiographies for some of my more nefarious characters. I have a cult leader who lies about his past. And before I knew what the lie is, I had to know what the truth was. So first we wrote down we me and my character. Yeah, we if you hear me say we, it's me and whoever my character is. So first, we wrote down what actually happened. Great, the bullets points of what actually happened. And then I started thinking about, well, if he was going to lie about this, he's a narcissist. How would that lie change and develop over time until it gets to where it ultimately is? So the first lie he told didn't get him the results that he wanted, didn't get the empathy, didn't get the love that he was seeking. So he told a different lie, and a different lie, and a different lie until finally he landed on this one specific lie that got him all the love, the empathy, everything he was craving. So now that is the lie that he tells himself. And only I and he knows the truth. Every other character thinks that this is the truth. The only way that I could get to that point was to actually sit down, beat it out, and write down his story. Another example of that was diving into a character who lives alone in space. It's in space for 6 months all by himself. What is he doing? What is he doing in space? Gosh, I don't know. But if you told me to sit down and just tell you off the top of my head, I probably couldn't do it. So instead, I did this. I sat down and I wrote 16 pages of prose about this character from the second he wakes up to the second he goes to sleep. What is he doing? What is he thinking? And that really led to some wonderful nuggets. I learned through doing this prose that my character is very intentional, takes all of his time to do every single task because he used to do tasks really quickly when he first started his mission and found himself to be extremely bored by the end of the day. So now he does everything with intention, very slowly, to help reduce the repetition and the length of the days. These are huge nuggets that come into play in the screenplay later, and you can choose to use these, not use these, but now you have them and they will help build out your world. I was doing this kind of prose for George, our filmmaker. What I would do is sit down and, first of all, what is his short film about? I would actually like give a log line and maybe like a little beat by beat of what his short film is about because I need to know why he's so passionate about that short film. And I'm sure that's going to play a huge role in the entire overarching plot of the story. I would also then want to know more of like, where did he grow up? How was his family dynamic before he started being a filmmaker, after he's a filmmaker? What events did he miss that were so wildly important that led to this regret? And I would actually go in and I would write that. I would write that down to the best of my ability. Like I like to use diaries and journals to kind of like tell those past events. If he was having a therapy session and was actually talking to his therapist, real talk, not hiding. What would that sound like? What would that look like? What stories would he bring up to his therapist that feel real and important to him? These are great creative prompts that you can use to try to build the background of your character. Another fantastic one is having your own interview with with who your character is, and you can ask them questions like, what's your favorite food? What kind of clothes do you like to wear? If somebody asks you for your phone number at a bar, what's your response? What's your favorite dad joke? How long can you run on a treadmill before you feel like you're going to die? It doesn't matter what questions you ask as long as you are asking questions and their characters are responding in detail. And I will link a little character sheet down below so you can look at these prompts and answer some of the questions for yourself. We've covered wants, flaws, background. The last thing that you need to know to make your character really fully pop is a stellar intro. How are we meeting this person for the first time? This is really what's going to grab the attention of your reader, make them keep wanting to read more, and ultimately lead to produced scripts. Interesting intros. On that note, let's brainstorm some for George. How could we meet George? Keeping in mind that ultimately his final goal is to meet this director, right? So the intro could tie to that, or the intro could tie to his grandma and his flaw. Either of these anchors are great places to start and also kind of set us up for the story that we're about to jump into as an audience. Opening scenes are also a place where I really like to steal from my real life of things that have happened and put them into an interesting open scene. So if something interesting happens to me and I think, oh, that's unique and fun, I do have a running notes list in my iPhone just of like weird human things that have happened to me. And I love to pull from that. So let's do that right now. I'm not going to let you in on all of these, but let's see what I've got. Yeah. Okay. This one works. I was in a coffee shop and I saw somebody with a proper film camera and I recognized their face. And I said, I must have worked with them on set or I saw them at a networking event or something. And I, of course, went up like, hey, I know you. Hi. And I was immediately met with, I don't, we don't know each other. And I doubled down. No, we've definitely met. Here are a list of places that I think that we could have met. And they adamantly said, no, no, we have not met. It took a while for me to realize that I knew them from Love is Blind, which was shot here in Chicago. Egg on my face, right? But that's a great way to meet our character. Now we're going to take George and kind of put him in a similar situation where he's at the coffee shop working on his passion projects. He looks up and he realizes, oh, I think I know this person. goes to talk to this person, completely makes a fool of himself, but we can also reveal that he's a filmmaker in that moment, that he's searching for collaborations, that he's working on a project, especially if he brings that up to this person who he just met. And maybe he's a little in his own world, right? He's not fully aware of everything going on in the world and kind of gets things jumbled around and mixed up, which is another little character trait that we can play on throughout the rest of the story. Now, this is just an example off the top of my head, but it is something that you can do, either pulling from real life or putting them in unique situations. A lot of scripts like to start with waking up, going to work. That can be really boring. The only way to really make something like that intentional and working is showing us how they get to work. I don't mean like, do they drive? Do they take the bus? But like, who are they when they interact with the world around them on their way to work? Are they really impatient when they hit the elevator buttons? Are they smiling at people? Are they always in a rush? Are they super early? If you're going to show us like a day in the life right at the top, you have to get specific and interesting. Don't just show us where they live, but show us how they live. If you take all of this that I've shown you today, starting with their wants, moving into their flaws, doubling down on who they are as a character, and showing us who they are right from the beginning with that really interesting, gripping moment of introduction, you will have better characters. They will be more well rounded. And people will not only want to act in your scripts, but they will want to read them, produce them, and move them into the next phase, which is obviously ultimately the goal. I'm afraid we've come to the end of our lesson today, but if you love that, I do these kinds of things all the time. So make sure you like, subscribe. If you have specific questions about screenplays, drop them in the comments. I would love to know what your burning questions are. And I've linked great resources in the caption. So make sure you check out any of those resources there. I honestly am here to help you as an emerging screenwriter go from your first draft to your final draft with ease and really dig into the heart of your story because your story matters. So let's write it together.